Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar of Continuous EC2 Spot Market Prediction for Continuous Optimization. We have here with me Amiram Shachar, Head of Research, and Amiram Shachar, CEO of Spot. Myself is Jonathan Cohen. I'm the Head of Product Strategy here at Spot, and today we are going to talk about the products that are leveraging predictive rebalancing, what is predictive rebalancing, and getting into the deep dive of its machine learning algorithms, processes, and metrics. So before we kick off, I want to first align so we can all be on the same page on the basics of cloud compute pricing models. So first of all, the first and the basic one is on demand, where you can scale up and down for variable demand. You can start and stop it whenever you want, and you will pay basically on what you actually used. This is the most expensive per unit cost model, because eventually this is like the original price of the instance. But eventually there is another pricing model, which is the reserved capacity. The reserved capacity is much more affordable per unit, but it is less flexible, because eventually you commit to future years, so you can commit to 1 to 3 years for a specific bundle of resources or amount of resources, etc. But this is tricky, because eventually you can get up to 72% of discount from the on-demand pricing. But when you plan reserved capacity for the next 1 to 3 years, and you take in consideration projects that you have, it might be that the project that you planned and purchased reserved capacity for will be canceled, for example. And then you will find yourself in a situation where you underutilize or overutilize of reserved capacity. The last one is excess capacity, where excess capacity is actually the spare capacity of data centers of the cloud providers, let's say AWS, Azure, GCP. This is the cheapest option, but this is the riskiest one as well, because eventually there's no SLA, and it can be taken away at any moment by design. So if there's a shortage on Spot instances in the data center, if there's a shortage of infrastructure in the data center, and you're using a Spot instance of M5 extra large, if there's a customer that wants to pay the full price, go with on demand, it will be taken away from you for this customer. So in that case, it became a real challenge to deploy production workloads into Spot instances without a wrapping mechanism or without a platform that actually can provide a full service around that, or a DIY solution that you can do. This is for excess capacity. So as I said, this is the riskiest one. And eventually you need a wrapping mechanism in order to make sure that your workloads can tolerate that, and make sure that you have the automation around that continuously optimize your workloads. Okay, so in order to kick off the predictive rebalancing discussion, I want to discuss first on elastigroup, which is the initiator for predictive rebalancing. The initiator of predictive rebalancing is eventually elastigroup, which is the first product since the inception of Spot, formerly Spotinst. And eventually it has 3 layers. The first one is infrastructure provisioning and pricing, where the infrastructure provisioning and pricing eventually select the right instance types and instance sizes in the right pricing model. So either Spot, on demand, reserved capacity, it will deliver the maximum cost efficiency with an enterprise service SLA. Now, the next layer is predictive scaling and rebalancing. Let's focus for a second on predictive rebalancing specifically, where predictive rebalancing will predict interruptions before they actually happen, and will launch another instance instead to serve the requests. It has a lot of features we will get into in the next slides. The last layer is intelligent traffic routing or intelligent traffic flow. Intelligent traffic flow balance the requests in accordance to the size of the VMs. So if we have a small VM in the elastigroup configuration, it will get less requests than the bigger instance. And connect and integrate with the application load balancer to make sure that it leverages the waits function in order to make that happen. So now, after we talked about elastigroup for a bit, I want to go into the main process that leverage predictive rebalancing and is the replacement themselves. So what you can see here is that without Spot by NetApp, without elastigroup, when you set a skill set or auto-scaling group with the required capacity, when there's an interruption that happens, you will find yourself below the required capacity when it comes to instance count. And when there will be a recover, and there will be a recover as part of the scaling mechanisms of the cloud providers, you will find yourself again in the required capacity. But there was a drop. You got a hit on your workload. And in case there is interruption but no Spot capacity available at all, you will find yourself in a massive drop where there's no recovery until there will be Spot available. So with elastigroup with elastigroup, what will happen is that you have the required capacity, and if elastigroup predicts an interruption, it will launch a new instance before the interruption itself, to make sure that you are in the required capacity at least. Actually, we will increase a bit the required capacity in order to make sure that you are stable. And then what will happen is that once the new instance is healthy, the old instance will be deregistered from the load balancer and disconnected from the cluster. In case there are no Spot markets available at all, in worst case scenario, we will fall back to on-demand. So your required capacity will be maintained all the time, just that the pricing models might be changed during this time. And it is important to mention that once Spot markets that are configured in your groups will be available again, elastigroup will continuously monitor that and will revert back to Spot to make sure that you are fully optimized using Spots. So in order to do that, we need to create a mechanism that actually somehow scores the markets. And the markets are being scored in a range of 0 to 100, but it has many factors in it. One of the main factors is the probability for interruption in a time frame, specific time frame. So what you can see here in the left side of the screen is a heat map of the different markets. What is a market? A market is a combination of availability zone, instance size, and operating system. So we define that as a market, and each one of them has its own score. You can see here scores of 0, 3, and 96. So eventually, 96 is much better than 3 or 0, right? So what will elastigroup do is that it continuously monitors the scores of the configured markets. And if it sees that there is a drop in the market score, it will proactively rebalance the instance from one market to another one to make sure that you're running on the best market it can be right now, that is available right now. So again, it is important to mention here that elastigroup continuously monitors the scores, and based on the scoring itself, decides what to do, whether to stay on the market or to rebalance from the market. So let's have a simple visualization around that. Let's say you are running your workloads on elastigroup on Spot instances, but then elastigroup predicts an interruption. So what will happen is that it will launch a new instance, whether it will be a new Spot instance, and if there is no available markets at all, it will launch an on-demand instance to maintain your required capacity. And then eventually, once it is healthy, the new instance is healthy, it will drain the old Spot instance of its workloads. So, and the old instance will get interrupted, the new instance is healthy and serving the requests, and then we are good to go. In case that the new instance that was launched was an on-demand instance and not Spot instance, what will happen is that elastigroup will revert back to Spot instance as soon as possible, or as long as you haven't configured a Windows maintenance window as part of your configuration. If you've had configured a maintenance window as part of your configuration, it will revert back to Spot in a specific point in time that you've defined. So let's go ahead and drill down a bit more into predictive rebalancing. Spot by NetApp, or formerly Spot-Inst, has started with elastigroup. And since the beginning, we've managed many customers with many Spot instances, etc. So as long as we went through the years, we started to gather a very big data set. And that's a great example, because in the last 12 months, you can see that we ran almost 160 million running instances with 10.6 billion VCP running hours across 10,500 markets. So this is data set only from the last 12 months, but you can assume, or eventually, if we are talking about 5 to 6 years, we're talking here about much bigger data set that provides us the ability to learn a lot from it and to take the next steps based on it. And this really brings us to what we've done with predictive rebalancing. Based on this data set that we have, and based on the very unique data set that we have, we created multiple models in different types. The first one is interruption models, where it predicts the probability of an interruption in the next 15 minutes or 1 hour. Usually it is being used continuously by elastigroup to verify if there will be an interruption or not in the next 15 or 1 hour. So if there is a probability for interruption in the next 15 minutes, elastigroup will start and replace the instance. The other type is denied request model, where sometimes there's lack of capacity in the market. And you go out and ask for Spot instance, for example, from AWS, and you get back a response that it is not possible. There's no capacity. In that case, this is called denied request, because you requested and was denied. For that, instead of keep trying markets, we have a real-time model that maps us the markets that are available for new requests right now. So this is for the denied request. And the last but not least is the minimum instance lifetime models. Minimum instance lifetime is a feature that predictive rebalancing was launched with. It provides you the ability to set minimum instance lifetime configuration in your group configuration, where you say that you want the instances to run at least 6 hours. For example, you have specific jobs that you want to run at least 6 hours. In that case, you can define 6 hours as part of the minimum instance lifetime. So there are multiple models, 1, 3, 6, 12, and 24 hours. And yes, there are some markets that can run even more than 24 hours. And that's what we do here. When you ask for 6 hours, for example, what elastigroup will do is to find you the best candidates that can live that long. Of course, there might be unexpected interruptions, but in case you ask for 6, elastigroup will do the best it can in order to provide you the best instances that can live longer than 6 hours. So this really improved the way customers are experiencing elastigroup. There's a significant improvement. This is a snapshot of Spot instances interruptions across all Spot pools of a typical week. What we can see here that with predictive rebalancing and without predictive rebalancing, during the weekends, there are not a lot interruptions, right? That makes sense because there's no a lot demand. But if we look on the peak hours or business days, etc., you can see that without predictive rebalancing, there are much more interruptions than with predictive rebalancing. Sorry. So predictive rebalancing really reduced the number of interruptions when running with elastigroup. And this really brings me to the next slide on where and when you can actually use it. So predictive rebalancing is leveraged by elastigroup and Ocean. As some of you may know, Ocean using elastigroup as an engine to provision and allocate everything. So you will find predictive rebalancing as part of rebalancing once interruption is predicted, just like I mentioned before, and just like we presented. The next place is rebalance when RIs and savings plans are suddenly available for use. So, example, you had a project, was running on RIs, then there was a scale down, and these instances are not being used right now. These RIs and commitments are not being used. What elastigroup will do is that it will rebalance from a spot to RI or to a saving plan instance in order to make sure that you will utilize what you have paid for already. The next place where predictive rebalancing is happening is fallback to on-demand. Of course, if we see that there are no spot available, we will fall back to on-demand and rebalance to on-demand. We will revert back to spot. And if we are running right now on non-preferred type or non-preferred AZ, although it is configured in the group, because the availability was not good enough, because the score is not good enough, or because the cost aspect is not good as it could be, we can revert back to the preferred AZ and instance type once they become healthier. The last thing that uses predictive rebalancing is auto-healing. So when an instance becomes unhealthy, predictive rebalancing will rebalance this instance and will replace it to launch a new one, hoping that it will be healthy. So this is when predictive rebalancing is happening in elastigroup. And the next slide is a story I have to tell you about a specific customer that was a design partner of predictive rebalancing. Generally speaking, we as Spot are working and developing our features based on customer feedbacks. We are working closely with our customers in order to make sure that their experience will be as best as possible. And for this specific feature, IronSource was a great design partner. And this is their quotation. Eventually, they run thousands of Spot instances for their core technologies without needing to touch any aspect of their deployment. And this happens to many of our customers. Many of our customers that utilize predictive rebalancing today can go to sleep without any worries because predictive rebalancing got their back. So this is the time to pass the mic to Idan to take the discussion for the machine learning. So Idan.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan, for the excellent presentation. Now I want to give you some background about what's really behind it all. And the solution is based on our data. So first of all, we can discuss a bit about the data that we have. So Spot, or before and it was the Spotins, exists for a long time. And we have record since 2017 of interruptions that our customers experienced. So it looks something like that. This is a small batch. Can tell you a specific market and tell you that at a specific time an instance interruption occurred or denied Spot request occurred. So we have data about years back how markets behave. From this data, we are calculating a score that intuitively what it does is trying to measure the ratio between the number of interrupted Spot instances to all existing Spot instances in the market. You can see two parameters here. So M is the market and T is the time. So one thing to notice is that the score for a market at a specific time is based on statistics for the next 30 minutes, T plus 30. Let's see an example. So if we have a market G4DN to extra large at US is 1, we want to predict a score at noon at a specific date. So now if we know that in the next 30 minutes on average 1,000 Spot instances live and 200 of them got interrupted, so we can calculate the market score and get that the score is 80. Now, I just want to note that this is a very simplified formula. Part of the things we are doing in the research team is thinking of ways to normalize better this formula and make it better for our customers. But this is the intuition. It's something along those lines. So now we have the score. And I think you should have two questions. The first one is, how can we tell how many spot instances lives in a market? It's not common knowledge. It's not something that AWS is going to share with us. And it's not going to tell us how many of them got interrupted. So the answer is you can't. We can't really know the true number, but we can estimate it. And this is exactly where the data that I talked about before comes handy. And the more data you have, the more accurate your estimation are going to be. And as I mentioned, at Spot by NetApp, we have 1,000 of customers' records, so we can make really good estimation of that. The second question is, okay, we have statistics, but as I mentioned, the formula looking at the future, because we want to know how likely you are to get interrupted in the next 30 minutes, in the next hour, and so on. So how can you get statistics about future data? And this is exactly why we are using machine learning. The idea is that machine learning can allow us to predict the future in a way. And how it does that? So the idea is that, first of all, we need to look at past data and kind of simulate the scores on past events. So we look on all the years back, as I mentioned, since 2017, and generate scores for the past. Now, if we look at the past, we can generate scores based on the future because it already happened. Like if we are trying to create score for something that happened a day ago, we have the future. And so we can calculate the score. So now we have the data, we have the scores for many events, the score that we want to predict. And what the model does, it takes past data and score, and it learns correlations between the data and the scores. This is what we are doing on past data. And the idea is that when we are now going to use future data, like the current timestamp, the model can tell us the score of the future. So this is what machine learning gives us. So we can now predict what is the likelihood for interruption in the next 30 minutes, in the next hour, and so on, because we have a model that learns correlation between past statistics and future prediction. So how the score behaves, so I think this is something that is interesting to see. So on the top end, we have a graph that shows the behavior of a market. So the red line is the number of spot instances that lives on that market. This is based on our customers. So we have around 250 spot instances. And you can see that it drops from time to time. And this is exactly where the market's starting to switch to on-demand. And the blue line, this is exactly the indicator that tells us how many interruptions occurred. So you can see when interruptions starting to happen, the spot instances are starting to get interrupted and fall. Now, the green line is the market score. And this is what we give in our platform. So you can see that before the interruption even begin, the market score starts to drop. And this is the benefit, because we can tell even before it happens that there is a chance that we are going to get interrupted soon. And this is because it can learn the patterns, the behavior of the market. So two statistics that I think that important when we are trying to evaluate how good the market score is, availability score. So the first thing is, what we want is that low score will mean that there is high chance of the market being interrupted. And this is what we are showing here. This is the probability of interruption given a score. So if the score is between 0 to 10, you can see that there is 70% for this market to get interrupted in the next 30 minutes. And as the score is getting higher, the chance for interruption is dropping a lot. So this is exactly where we can kind of set a threshold for, if you care more about availability, we'll start doing the rebalancing only for higher scores, or if you really want to run on the cheapest solution, we can set the threshold lower. So this is where we can play with the level of availability versus cheapest for our customer. The other thing that I think is important is to look at the score distribution, because we don't want all the markets to have bad scores. We do want to, if we can run on a market, we want to run on it. So what we are showing here is that this is the distribution of markets, and you can see that most of them lives between 90 to 100. So it means that most of the time, the availability is going to be high, and we are not going to do anything to your instances. Only at some cases, only when it's really high likelihood that you get interruption, the score will drop. So these are the two statistics that are important. And as you can see, it behaves really well. The last thing I want to talk is give you some insight about the features that help making those predictions. So we have hundreds of features, but the most important are obviously based on historical data of the market. That means that the model can look on what happened in the market, let's say, in the last hour. So we can it can look on how many interruptions occurred in the last hour in this specific market, and based on that predict if there is chance for interruption or not. Or it can tell, let's say, the last time an interruption occurred in the market. Other features could be related to how many spot instances live in this market. And again, this is kind of give the model estimate of the popularity of the market. So those features are the most important for the decision. The next feature is related to time. So time can tell us something about the patterns of our customers. So it can tell us that on weekend, for instance, maybe there is a higher chance for spot to leave. Maybe specific months are more problematic than others. And we can see that the model utilizes those features to make the prediction. And this is based on general statistics. The third feature is related to the region. So there is a big difference in behavior between different regions, even for the same instance type. So it means that even if you are looking at US East and US West, don't expect the same behavior. It's going to behave differently. It's different pool. And even the area zone can change the way the pool behave. And our model takes it into account when you make decisions. So the third one is maybe the most trivial one, the instance itself. So it's going to look on the size, the operating system, for instance. It does make a lot of difference if it's Windows or Linux, and the family. So those are some of the most important features for the model. As I said, we have hundreds of them, and the model finds how those features correlate with the scores to make the prediction. So that's it from my end. Thank you. If you want to get started, you have the link here, and I think this is time to go to Amiram.
Yeah, this is the time for the panel.
I'm really actually really impressed by the level of questions we're getting on the chat. Johnny and Idan, you can go and answer. I was just typing some answers for the great questions we're getting. So I'm just really encouraging everyone to ask questions. People are really drilling down, and this is good. That's exactly why we're doing it. And yeah, we can go to the fun part of the of our webinar, which is kind of like a live discussion, not like slides and stuff, but mostly like really casual discussion about this topic. I will start just by saying that it is a huge honor for me personally to be here with both of you, Johnny and Idan. And, like the two people who are leading something, so technological, yet so close to customers. And this is really something very delicate to develop because it's affecting customers' production environment. And we need to be really good about what we do. Otherwise, we don't have any reason for existence as a company. And second, I'm really glad and feeling lucky that, we've been going together for the last, it's funny, we both know each other, all of us know each other for more than 15 years, back from the military days, and going from the military days together and going through so many things and running big things together now. This is just, just being lucky, but doing what you do, what you love, and actually getting paid for this. So it's great. So let's get to the panel with some questions. So I'll start with the first question to Johnny, who's the lead product manager for elastigroup and did most of the work on predictive rebalancing with the machine learning team. Johnny, we all know that the predictive rebalancing and predicting spot instances interruption was something very important to us. Can you explain how important was this and the level of the stress that were put on you to deliver this?
Of course. Well, customers that are running their production on spot instances, eventually this is something that can be, again, by design, spot instances can be taken away at any moment, right? And to be a product or a platform that customers can really trust you to run the workloads and the production workloads with you without any concerns and set and forget. This is something that I go to sleep with every night. So eventually the responsibility here and the value to customers is huge because on one hand we are the using spot instances is saving up to 90% cost. It can be translated to $1 million a year. On the other hand, the availability is still the most important thing for most of our customers. So this is why we continuously evolve predictive rebalancing to improve the capabilities. 5 years ago we didn't call it predictive rebalancing, but since the inception of elastigroup and spot inst, this was the main value, right? So yeah, we keep on improving it. This is something that we invested since the beginning of since the beginning of spot inst, but we did invest in re-innovate predictive rebalancing, adding the additional models, working with the different teams. Working with Dan is, first of all, a great personal opportunity for me to work with such talented person. But in addition to that, it's collaborating research teams with product team, with R&D teams to make sure that this feature, as critical as it is, will go to market as fast as possible, right? So we are talking here about at least 6 months of work that we've done to re-innovate the models and pushing it into new features. But when we see the significant improvement, it worth everything.
Yeah, totally hear you, and it's a good segue for my next question to Idan. So Idan, hearing Johnny and looking at like your slides, so a dumb question that one might ask you. So for those of you who don't know, Idan holds a PhD in machine learning from I think one of the most lucrative universities in Israel. So he knows one or two things about machine learning. So Idan, can you explain like why machine learning for EC2 Spot instances? Like why just write simple rules and let it run?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, simple rules can never really generalize to all the markets that we are seeing today. So any new market has different behavior, and we want a general solution. We can't really rely on engineers to keep tuning ad hoc rules and changing things all the time. It will never end. And what machine learning gives us is the ability to adapt quickly, to retrain things on new data, and to predict the future in a way. And when we are talking about availability score, we care about the future. We don't care what happened in the past. We can't rely on that. We want to know what will happen in the next hour, in the next 2 hours. We have to look maybe even 24 hours into the future, because this is the only way for our customers to have the reliability that they're looking for. So this is why machine learning, I think, is the only solution at this point of time. And now, so the next question one may ask is,
can you before that, can you specify one thing that was particularly hard to figure out in the process of doing that?
So I think the main challenge is when we just came into the problem. Like if you look on the literature, everyone will tell you can't predict spot instance behavior. You can't predict the price. This is what academia tells you. And from what we've seen, it's all because they didn't really have the data that we have, and maybe they didn't use the novel or state-of-the-art tools that currently machine learning have developed into. They've tried simple tools like logistic regressions, simple solution. And now with the more advanced algorithms, the picture is, from the way I see it, is totally different. So what we see is that behavior, as you know, of spot instances is basically based on demand. And demand is something that is really based on human behavior, and human have some form of pattern. Like we have the days that we work in, we have the hours that we work, we have holidays, we have some trends like that people prefer specific instances than others. Now, right. If we take all that into account, that behavior is something that can be predicted, at least on large scale. Like if we look on all the population, there is some pattern. So definitely we can see that what everybody told you that it's impossible to predict it, it's totally possible. You just need enough data. And this is something that is really unique to Spot by NetApp. And with that, we are just bringing this, I think, novel solution into the field.
I think hearing this from you, brings a really important. It's a really important statement, because I can tell you when the company was started. So I've seen a lot of people's eyebrows, like this. Oh, can you really predict? Can you really do this? And I agree with applying the relevant technology to this. This is what wins the game at the end of the day. And I think like that, because the theme for this webinar is the continuous part of it, because it's not something that we do one time. It's something that we do all the time. We improve it all the time with you and your team, and with the engineering team and all of our product teams. And that's the thing, that this is something that is live and kicking, and we always need to be on top of it. So I think this is really great to hear it from you. And I'll ask Johnny. Johnny, we know that we have a great partner on the other side, AWS. They've been working with us and sharing information with us and listening to us and always innovating with us. And obviously, predictive rebalancing is a feature that we have, and AWS has other features. Can you explain where predictive rebalancing adds even more value on top of the features of AWS?
Yes, of course. So first of all, it is always nice to see that AWS keep on improving the experience for their users. As you know, as they go forward, they keep on improving and adding more features. One of the recent features that they added is EC2 spot placement score, where you can actually see a score for certain inputs that you provide, similar to the concept of the heat map that we have. But sometimes, like, it is for certain use cases, right? So, for example, from the documentation of the EC2 spot placement score, it is not meant for continuous optimization. It is not meant for programmatically query the scores. It is meant for the UI, maybe for the API, for certain calls to understand what is the status of the markets. But you can't actually build like a dependent automation around it that will continuously optimize your workloads and continuously optimize your costs and make sure what is the next market to choose. Because first, it is limited by API calls based on their documentation. And secondly, it provides data into whether it will be possible for you to launch now an instance. So it's kind of the denied request scoring that we talked about. It's not about like replacing an existing instance that is running right now, whether maybe there is a better market to jump into. So even if you know that there will be an interruption and you get a recommendation that there might be an interruption with not any guarantee about that, you don't know what to choose next, right? But I believe that they are going to the right direction, and this is very nice to see that. As you mentioned, we are working very closely with them. They are a great partner of us, and we will continue to collaborate and create more solutions together.
I've seen here a question from the audience. Can we do the same for GCP and Azure, or is it only AWS?
Yeah, so everything is possible on AWS and on Azure and GCP as well. The UIs might be a bit different, but the mechanism inside, eventually, we provide the ability to identify interruptions before we support the gradual replacements. When you are running on, for example, elastigroup for Azure, the experience comparing to a native skill set on Azure is far different. Because all the mechanisms that we have there and the optimization part, I will encourage everyone that wants to, everyone that are running on Azure and GCP, just go ahead and try Elastigroup for Azure and GCP. You will be very surprised by the values that it provides.
So maybe now let's go for a little bit of future statements. So Idan, what's next for the machine learning team? And then I'll ask you, Jonathan, the same question. What's next?
Yeah. So I think Jonathan can elaborate on the product, but here you just see one thing that machine learning can bring to the DevOps community. It's just spare resources and be able to use them. But I think it's a whole new domain that needs to be exploited. So we can think about auto-scaling. That is something that we are working really hard right now, implementing. And when you are thinking about reserved instance, it's also something that if you can predict your future usage and how other customers are going to utilize instances, you can make much better decisions. And going forward, it could be leveraging all types of products, from SecOps to, as I mentioned, FinOps. Everything is going to, the decision are going to be much better once we make them based on machine learning and can predict the future before we make the decision. So instead of just using some rules and keep trying to tune them, we're just going to predict what's going to happen and then make a decision based on that. So any algorithm can leverage from that. And I think maybe Jonathan, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's the next thing for ML? First of all, continue on improving predictive rebalancing, because this is the main feature that I want to have for Elastigroup, right? So this is the value proposition. This is the main feature that I want it to be continue to improve. Having said that, among like the customer feedbacks, varying factors, etc., predictive rebalancing again will continue to improve. The next feature for us is to implement even better than what we have today, better machine learning algorithms for predictive scaling that takes into considerations many factors that we don't have today. We have many customers that are using today our predictive scaling capabilities, and I'm very excited to see how they will react when they will see the new predictive scaling that we are building. So this is the next thing. And of course, as Idan mentioned, like the SecOps areas that we have just announced like a few months ago about spot security and the things that we are doing with Eco and Cloud Analyzer, all of these things are things that need machine learning, and these are things that are being developed right now as part of the processes that we have. So a lot to expect.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm a little bit disappointed because I wanted to hear that you guys can predict what's going to be the Bitcoin price tomorrow. So I don't know what to do.
By the way, maybe Dan can. I don't know. Maybe Dan can.
No, Bitcoin is too hard. Maybe we need much more data for Bitcoin.
So that's really fantastic. And again, like, Idan, it seems like you're going to be very busy. And Johnny, hearing you saying, first of all, keep improving the existing model, I think this is a big statement for our customers, because we're not always like in a rush to go to the next thing. We're in a rush to keep providing phenomenal, exceptional customer service. Like this is the foundation of how we built that company, and this is the foundations that we want this company to have forever. That's the legacy we will keep here. And it's just amazing, just hear it in just casual discussion. So thank you. And now I see here like really great questions. So, we can discuss some of it, verbally. So, how do we charge for the product, Johnny? Let's do like quick answer so we can answer everybody.
Yeah, we do charge the product based on savings that we make for you. So eventually, if you haven't saved, you will not pay. If you saved, we take a friction out of the savings.
Awesome. And now I see a question regarding stateful. Like, can you run stateful environments with Elastigroup?
Absolutely. So you can run stateful applications with Elastigroup or the managed instance solution. So Elastigroup stateful is for groups that have more than one node in their configuration. A managed instance for AWS is a solution that provides the ability to run single instance configurations. What we do over there is that we will persist your IP and we will persist your root data and data volumes. And even if you are running on different AZs, we take a snapshot and we will create a disk out of it as well. By the way, this is something that exists for AWS for like 2 to 3 years, but we are working very hard to have it on March for all customers on Azure as well. So if you are running Azure and want to reduce your cost to 90% less. This will be possible in a matter of a month or two.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm seeing also more questions that we can just follow up and answer those. This webinar is recorded and we will post it on YouTube. I think it was really good panel, just understanding the importance of machine learning for predicting such a complicated data set. As Idan said, data is power. The more data we have, the better we're positioned to predict, and the better we're positioned to actually win those predictions. And at the end of the day, it's all about continuing to improve it. We can never just rest and just know that the model is working. So that's why everyone here still has a job. And yeah, this is amazing, and I hope it gave everyone just a glimpse of understanding into what we're doing in a day to day, or just in building our technology and the power of the technology that powers Spot in the end of the day. So more to come. I think this is has been great. And Johnny and Idan, if you want to add anything before we wrap up, so floor is yours. Thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank everyone that joined to this webinar. I can see many attendees. I can see many questions that we will follow up. So thank you for your time. This is much appreciated, and we will follow up with every question that you asked on the chat.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, everyone. And if you have more specific questions, I would love to answer them. Feel free to reach out in any platform. And that's it, I think.